side. Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, hey, hey, don't worry. I think I panicked a bit. Okay, I learned a bit. I gotta take
Yeah,
this
I think
time.
Aaron, is he there?
Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome, students and lecturers of UOW MKDU. Welcome to another podcast of Today on Friday, tonight on Friday, as a matter of fact. I am your host, Arif Imran, and this is my co host, Nia Ifa. Say hello.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're all healthy and staying safe. And yeah, thanks for joining in.
Okay, so our talk for tonight will be about GitHub, a software that has become a staple in the programming world that many programmers use to collaborate with each other on projects. We will be discussing about how this software can be used by our fellow students of UW MKDU to their own benefit so that they can produce better quality work. Tonight we have a special guest, Jonathan Tang. He is a UOW MKDU alumni who is currently working full-time at Streamline Studios as a junior game programmer. He was involved in the production of the game Hado, which has won multiple awards, such as Best Award at SIGG 2021, the finalist for SEA Games Award, and finalist for a Pictar Award. Congratulations on those achievements, Jonathan.
Thank you for the high praise.
So, Jonathan, to help the audience who are new to GitHub, could you please tell us what GitHub is?
Right, so here I go. When I talk about GitHub, and usually to people who are not familiar with it, it's like opening a very big box of information to them. So I think the first step we should do is that I should do is to first explain what is the nature of GitHub and what is it all about. So the very fundamentals of GitHub, or what most people call GitHubbing nowadays, is actually it is a type of program that helps with source control. Source control is actually a collaborative method that connects to a repository, either on a server online or a server inside a company where all computers are connected. And developers collaborate on making changes and making contributions to the same single product without destroying each other's work, and also making sure that the history of the product change, whatever features in, is clean and documented so that if any problem happens, rolling back is not a big issue as it was during the early stages of software development. So in source control, technically, typically there's two types of source control. One is the distributed one is a centralized version one, like on the slide. The distributed ones are basically the original way of source control, which it basically places a server that connects to other computers, which the other computers will have a copy of the same repository of the server. So what the developer does is that they add changes, they make changes, they experiment or even destroy the product. It will be kept safe. It will be contained in their computer until they decide to push it onto the server repository. That's if their choice, to make that change. A centralized version control is a much more destructive way, in my personal opinion, because you directly commit to the repository in the server, but every company has their own safeguards and their own rule sets. So that's up to the workflow of each team and organization and how they want to do things. So the main reason of why you want to use source control can be boiled down to very simple elements is that one, you want a history and documents of your changes and to undo those changes when you need to. And two is to also make sure that in collaborative environments, you don't lose progress when people are working in parallel times, when they're working at the same time. So think about working on the same file. You will be like in olden days, like when like 2010, like those people who are not familiar with computers, imagine if you're working on a PNG or a text file and you write the stuff you want in, but also someone else is contributing to the same file. So when you copy over to, like, let's say a Google Drive, whose file do you replace? Source control helps with that by understanding what are the changes made and then merge them together. So let's move on to the next slide. Yeah, so the first and most important thing to realize about GitHub itself, it's actually a product. It's not really a method of source control. It is actually just a website that helps with source control, and some are just very popular. So GitHub, the name is derived from the language Git, which is used for collaborative environment that does all the things that GitHub you see now do. And it all started out from a black and white terminal, just like the things you see hackers do in media. And GitHub is not the only thing they can use for source control. There's tons of other sources. So those who uses Git would be like, no, apart from GitHub, will be Bitbucket, GitLab, GitKraken, or if you don't even like Git, you can choose Perforce, P5, SVN, or SCM. So like Unity, for example, the Unity engine, they have their own source control called Plastic SCM, but people probably need to purchase that. So yeah, that is the gist of source control. If you guys still don't understand, I have an example for you guys. So let's move on. So think about this. You and your team is tasked to write an essay on the same file, but you guys are working on it at the same time. Now this file is not Google Docs. You can't work on it online. It tells you what the other person is changing. So think of it like two separate local offline Microsoft Word files. So if you have your own paragraph and your friend, your teammate has their own paragraph, source control helps by identifying what changed, what did not change, and add them together. Well, this is a very simplified explanation, but it is somewhat like that. Yeah, it is somewhat like that. However, a thing with source control is that let me rephrase that. I realized that most people, when they go into source control, including myself, is that we need to understand the concept of source control, where basically it saves the changes instead of saving the files itself. Now, saving the files, could you imagine, let's say you're making a game that's 10 GB large. So each time you make a change and you want to save that change, you have to save something like 10 GB huge. what source control does very smartly to save your time and save your space is that it saves the changes you make. So let's say you change one line that could be just 1 KB of the entire 10 GB, and it just saves that 1 KB instead. So continue to move on. This concept is pretty important to grasp, and it might be very challenging for every beginner. So I would encourage beginners to try it out and see it in action first. So let's move on the slides, and let's move on again. So another example, again, for you guys to help visualize this is, imagine you have a room and you're painting the floors, the walls, and the ceilings. So in step 1, you paint the floors red. On step 2, you paint the walls yellow. And step 3, you paint the ceilings blue. So if you undo one step, like step 1, which is painting the floor red, you would remove the change of turning the floor red. So that means your walls and your ceilings will remain yellow and blue. So for example, if you undo step 1 and step 3, you will just undo the change you made onto the floor and the ceiling itself. So that means your walls will remain yellow. That is a very simplified, very simplified version of it, but you can think of it as this way. But remember that it saves the changes you make at each step. So for you to get back to a previous version of that file that you made, you must undo every step you made along the way and accordingly. Whew, that was a very big one.
All right. So thank you for the introduction. I believe that was the clearest and simplest explanation to help us familiarize with the software.
I do apologize if it's still confusing. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
But that's
alright.
okay.
So now that we know what exactly GitHub is, let's discuss on how it can be applied. So how exactly can this software be useful for game development and computing?
In almost every Cassie. In almost every game development environment or software engineering environment, everyone is almost always working on a product that we can agree, right? So when we work on a product, we want to make changes to it, but also control what the public sees. We can't just make changes to it that might introduce new bugs, and then suddenly the public tries this out and realize the bugs, it can harm the company's or organization's reputation. It can harm a lot of things and even break the game and just ruin everything, right? So in using source control, not only that we control what we can push out, it also helps with the collaborative environment that we have, like I stated earlier. So let's see. Well, using GitHub is by far the easiest source controls I've ever to learn, because it's been there for so long and most people use it. There's a lot of guides out there. It's the easiest to implement for students, I guess, students to try it out on their projects, because it's just so straightforward. Even though it looks complicated at first, I can guarantee you everything else looks much more complicated if you don't start from Git. But yeah, Git itself, it's pretty simple to make sure that your collaborative environment is safeguarded with proper guidelines if your team follows. There's a disclaimer there. If your team follows to commit and produce out a product that has a parallel development time. So by looking at the graph that we have here, like this is how Steam does it, is that they have their feature branches where each developer works in. They will move it all to a single branch in development. This is an internal, only the internal people can see it. So they merge their changes there, they put their features there, they work in parallel time, and they add it all in. They make sure things are okay. They will push it out for the beta testers. The beta testers think it's okay, then they'll push it out to release. So it's not really their pipeline here illustrated, but you can think of it like that. So on top of that, GitHub also makes sure that your code, your changes is reversible. It is documented. The most important feature of them all is because when your teammate accidentally deletes everything, you can get it back. So almost every program has an undo history. Like you're afraid of like, oh, accidentally close Photoshop and then I lost all my undos. Well, GitHub, well, if you in source control, if you do it right, you will get it back. It is forever imprinted in history, and you can get your changes back. So, for students who are not sure what they're doing or just experimenting with code, using source control can help potentially save yourself and save the team. Yeah.
All right, so yes, as you can see, GitHub is not just a software that used in game development, but it can be used in many fields. Now, getting started on using GitHub can be quite intimidating for new users. Nonetheless, I think it would be a waste for our fellow students to not be using it. So can you please tell us how our fellow students can get started on using GitHub?
Okay. Apart from like implementing in a project, I would say if you're a student, just make a project, like a side action project, or maybe a feature you want to explore, and try implementing source control as a workflow into it, and try to follow the professional ones, how they do it. There's a reason why professional stuffs are there and why they do it like that. So do it in a side project where you don't have stakes, and you can fail as much as you want there, and you will learn from it, well, from practical experience. So exposure in this exposure therapy is one of the best methods, in my opinion, for any language or like software methods or procedures that you want to learn. But there are also other ways that we can help with this. So GitHub itself, they also provide a student development pack, which provide all the pro features, provided that you are in a legitimate institution. So by applying for this, you are able to access GitHub's more privatized features, like rules and change that were basically things that people have to pay for, and there's a reason why they use it and monetize it. So those features can be hard to learn, but by using the pack, you can actually explore into it and get an insight of how the source control development and workflow works in the industry itself. Another thing that I would recommend as well is the learn git branching.js. It is an absolutely most interactive training element that I've tried for Git, and I learned a lot from it. I've actually learned a lot. I've did 2 years in GitHub, and from this I felt like I learned another 2 years in one day. There's a lot of things that the website shows that normal GitHub and normal Git terminals will never show you, because it's technically the website is like a game. You have an objective to do it in a certain amount of steps and you win it. And when you gamify things, things tend to get easier to learn. So I'll try heavy recommend to those who don't know anything about it. Try out learngitbranching.js. It's completely free. It is not my website. I'm not shelling out for it because I don't get anything from it. But yes, do try it out. And if you know how to use it, that means you know how to use Git terminal as well. So you can just skip the GitHub desktop and tell your friends that you're cooler because you can use PowerShell to do it. Yes.
All right, thanks for the tip. Another thing
No.
I want to address is an issue that students, especially the game dev students, may face while using GitHub. So while students are collaborating, they may find that their progress has been lost while pulling some changes. Why does this happen, and how can we avoid it?
Okay. The issue here is not that there's a feature of pulling changes, it's that the team is not communicating and it's not practicing isolated work ethics. This is why people branch off in the first place, so that when you work on a branch, people's changes don't affect your changes. But that doesn't mean that working on the same file will guarantee them to be safe from changes, because GitHub is smart in the sense it knows how to detect similar codes between the files and then insert them in. But some files like binary files, some information that cannot be parsed by GitHub itself, they won't know what you want to change. So you get merge conflicts like that. So I guess the isolated work ethics I just mentioned is about trying to be as isolated and avoid dependencies as much as possible when you guys when the team is working on different features, because that means if you have dependencies on each other, no matter what Git does, if you make a change, other people is dependent on the change, and therefore there is a conflict there. When you push your changes and push your changes, oh, the dependencies have changed. So what Nia you just said, like when they pull changes in and sometimes it erases your progress, it's not because the feature could not understand that. It's usually either a merge conflict has not been solved well, or it's that it's an old file and then a new change came in where the GitHub thinks that this new change is actually an old file. A new change came in and thought it was new and then just replaced it. So that also comes to the team communicating on what they should be touching on, what should they editing on, and they should also be aware what could potentially break for other people. Communication is key. So usually there should be a conflict. It will tell the thing will pop up in your face and say, and then give you a red arrow, and everyone will panic and say, oh, there's a merge conflict. What do we do? They'll ask you what to do and you don't know what to do. And that's usually what happens. It goes, everyone just go into full panic mode, but it's not really that scary. It's just, oh, I can just take your code and slap it here. And then that's resolved. But it comes with experience. So when you are more exposed to it, as I said before, if you're more exposed to it, you will know what to do when it comes and how to avoid it more. Yeah, that's all I can add to it. Oh, I will also add Git flow. Git flow is a method of how, it's not a rule, it's not a law to follow, but it's a international standard that people follow for a reason. It might not work for every team, and some team might just work better off with their own flow, but there's a reason why it is implemented a lot and almost by the whole world. It might be a hassle, but it works for a reason. And maybe the step to realize why it works will require you to understand the pain of losing things first. Yes. Been there, done that.
All right, so thank you for the advice. Now, audience, you can see just how important communication is while using GitHub. Now, on to the next question. It is common for students, especially game dev students, to be collaborating under a single branch. Should students make it a habit to create separate branches when doing work?
I'm gonna be honest. Depends on your team. Because sometimes it might just be easier to make quick changes onto the same branch, because as I said earlier, to make a proper workflow, it's usually because it's a very big collaborative environment. You're separated from your colleagues or teammates, and maybe they just aren't contactable at the moment. Maybe they're working from home all the way from overseas. The situations are endless. But if you're with your friends and you're sitting next to each other, you can just, it's really quick, and you can just make a very small change. You guys are just next to each other, communicating with each other, making sure things don't break. Then you can, but that's dependent on your team. In the end, I would still vouch for, yes, create your own branch. Yes, it's common for them to make it all under a single branch as well, because there is just a plethora of work ethics and working styles. Sometimes some things work for you, some things it doesn't. It work for you doesn't mean it work for others. But keep in mind, as I said before, there's a reason why it works for the rest of the world. So that being said, I was one of the students that worked under one branch, because if you're communicative with your team, you will avoid overwriting each other's stuff, and you will avoid trying to get scolded by your own teammate. So the reason why branching is important is because it keeps your work isolated, so that your changes doesn't break other people's changes, So if your teammate did something stupid, it's on their branch at least. So it's more like it's like wearing a mask in these times, so you don't spread the unintended changes to other people, and people don't spread your unintended changes to you. Yes.
All right.
Alright.
So, yeah, thank you for that tip. Now you can see just exactly why it is important to use branching while you are using GitHub, as it will make sure that if one of your team members messes up, well, at least the main branch will be all right. You just don't merge your team members' branch to your own main branch. So
I
yes.
like to like showcase one very famous quote from my teammate during FYP. Hey guys, I accidentally pushed to main. You guys can know what entailed on further. So
well, yeah.
Duly noted. So, while on topic, why is GitHub considered the go-to repository hosting service compared to other services like, let's say, GitLab and Bitbucket?
I think like the question can be very easily boiled down to why are people using Facebook instead of MySpace? Right? So better UI, better features, better functionality, pricing, you name it. So people found it easier to work with GitHub. It's popular, it's used almost everywhere, even if you like using one like something else, maybe your client prefer something else and you have to listen to your client anyway. So in the end, you can use what works for you. But GitHub right now is by far the most popular because it's robust enough. I won't say it's the most technically strongest. It might not be 100% best for everyone, but it's the most universal. And after exploring some other source control, I do personally think GitHub is also the easiest to use. The UI, the functionalities, pretty much straightforward. And when things are usually popular, it usually snowballs. So GitHub, they have their pretty good documentation system. They have a very active community that helps you debug or fix your problems and talk about problems you have. GitHub is you can share your stuff around very easily, and a very good use for GitHub is that you can host your own site on GitHub for free, entirely free. A repository on GitHub, if you upload like those HTML stuff in it, you can turn it into a website of your own for free. So a lot of features, they can afford to give so many features. So I guess that's why everyone like to use it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for giving us that tip. So, we want to know more about GitHub. Is it a service that is exclusive only for PC, or can it be used on any other platform such as mobile or something else?
So long as the platform can handle photo structures, language of Git, and can interact in a way they can understand, I see no problem, even on phones, even on Panasonic smart fridges, I guess. But
Okay.
I think the question boils down to, are you looking to develop apps and games softwares on a mobile phone? You do that on the fridge. It's not. I do not believe it's fully exclusive for PC. GitHub might be, Git might not be. I might need more research on that. But then again, I don't think they will ever need support for it because almost nobody else develops programs like this on a non-PC platform. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it is common to be using it on PC anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, we've already talked about the theory of how GitHub works, how the techniques and the methods to use while we are using GitHub. We also looked into some of the applications on how GitHub is used. But personally, from your experience, how was using GitHub like with your final year project along with your teammates?
Okay. I hope it's not really limited to only FYP. I got things to share that's not only final year projects, but I
It's
think
okay.
from let's see, my first game.
Jonathan, I
the
think
game
you cut
itself.
out.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's alright.
Am I working?
Yeah, I think it's working.
Okay, sorry. Let me let me roll back. So
All right.
I think I want to like share it straight from step-by-step growth to my final year project. So my first big project came as GPS one, where we all as a team have to make a game ourselves as a team. So like before then, everyone else was kind of isolated in their own work, and suddenly this is a collaborative thing. So everyone is like 10 times more anxious into contributing to a project that is related to the career we're trying to form. So my experience with it as programmers, I study as a programmer, so we come in saying like, all right, guys, this is it. We're gonna be professional. So we make branches for 2 weeks only. So we made 2 weeks of branches, realized that we do not know how to merge stuff, so we decided to bring it back to only one branch, which is main. And that's where my friends will come in and say, hey guys, accidentally push into main. Then we will have to resolve it. And learning how to resolve it was, I will put it very simply, it will turn my hair white, because it happens for a total of at least 2 times. And that means if I can't fix it, the progress is gone. And I couldn't fix for one of them, which we had no choice. Thankfully, someone had their branch. They didn't like pull the updates. They have to copy out the entire project, move it out. We nuked their branch and bring it back in from there. But that means other people's progress is gone as well. And that was one of the hardships we try to learn, and compromising our professionalism, yes. And I guess that would shape on our thinking on how we can better do collaborative environments. So on next step later in like GPS2, our next big game project, it's more to communicating. So we were still lazy. We did not want to make branches. We were tired of merging stuff because it's just an extra button. If I'm going to merge it into, let's say, development branch. Oh, by this stage we have a development branch now, so that we don't commit to the main, but we never use main anyway, so there wasn't a point to it. But we just wanted to, hey, let's be half professional instead. So we built off development channel. We made feature branches, but in the end, merging it, there was no one to review it. We did not know about the code review, the peer review workflow. We did not implement that, so people were just, hey, I'm merging this. Anyone care? No one cares. Okay, I press merge. No conflict. Then why am I branching off in the first place? If no one does that thing. So in the end, it became 2 branches instead. It's just that there's a main, there's a development, and we have a very huge development branch and a very ignored main branch because we forgot to merge development back in, and we did not have an audience anyway. So that was my second big experience. There are minor experiences from doing different other projects in like game jams and like side projects. And lastly, when I reached to my FYP, it was just, all right, guys, this is our final year project. We have to be professional about this. So we became very professional in not branching off. That was very conflicting of what I said, because we believe that, as I said before, workflow does not. You create the workflow for your team, right? What works best for your team? In the end, if it works absolutely efficient for a team, who is to judge that it's wrong? If it works all well, right? So what we did in my team is that we communicate, and communicate. No matter what we touch, if we know that we are not responsible for this and we have a dependency on others, we will ping the other person to hell and back, whether if they are touching it. So I think I've been using this word for a lot of time. I don't think I explained it. Touching it basically means if we're making changes to it. So I think that was the very key element in my environment where my programmers were very communicative. We were always online away because most of us are introverts and nerds. So a side ping will just take a few minutes of a reply and, oh, okay, I shouldn't be touching this, I should be touching this, and I should be scolding someone about this. So in my FYP, we also had a shriveled up main branch just in case an investor or what wants to see. We did plan to want to move like milestones in, but no one was responsible for that. I think everyone just forgot. So in the end, we had a development branch of 30,000 commits, which is pretty huge and pretty unsafe. But in the end, it all turned out well. So my guess is if you guys want to experience, then experience it in your own pace. And when you come out in the industry where, well, your boss is your manager, your boss, your supervisor is going to implement those changes onto you anyway, why not try out wacky methods to learn? I am not encouraging it. I'm just saying from a very wise person, fail early leads you to better wisdom early. Yeah.
Thank you for that advice and sharing some of your experience. Yes, while it is advised to branch off, I can understand that there may be some anxieties that will come with branching off. Perhaps students may not know what exactly each other are doing if we are not doing it in the same branch. But yeah, in conclusion, basically what's being said is you just have to find your own method, but keep in mind of your own professionalism, keep in mind the best practices. At least you will have more options.
Yes.
Yes.
In the end, when you're working, like because you're students, right? Everyone's almost just friends. When you're working with friends, do you really want to have the wall to be a colleague or coworker? Not many people care about it. But then again, career and stuff, it's a dilemma for another day. A topic for another day. But yeah, to go on, sorry.
Okay.
So,
Yes. Nia, do you have any questions for Jonathan?
yeah, actually I do. So, so do you have any besides the FYP? Do you have any other words? Do we want to continue on, or do we want to wrap up, or do we have time for one more question?
I have the time if you guys have the time.
Yeah, we definitely have the time actually. So, I mean, we've already talked about how you have used GitHub in your FYP, but you're already working full time now as a junior game programmer. Has your company ever recommended you to look into how to use GitHub along with projects that they are currently doing?
I think my company came with me already, like when I was hired, it's like they already assumed that I know GitHub actually. And again, I work for a pretty advanced company, so the standard's a bit higher. But they were there to train me. There's definitely things I did not know that GitHub can do, and therefore they actually did train me because I am, after all, a junior, and I've learned a lot from that. But I do think that when you go into like in the industry, since it's almost used everywhere else, it's kind of expected when you're coming in as a professional that you should know at least something about it, or at least know the existence about it. So definitely, if you're not a junior, you should know at least a source control method. So I won't say much on what my company is doing. We're not using GitHub entirely only. We're using a lot of different methods depending on what our client wants. But it's not, I don't think companies, they look for if whether you use GitHub. It's more that whether you know the importance of source control, importance of like the ethics and the fundamental concept behind it, why it should be that, and then you're good to go. So you don't have to be a pro in GitHub, but GitHub is by far, as I said, in my personal bias, it's the most easiest to learn for me and the most popular as well. The resources are now like readily available almost everywhere anytime you have a question. So just easiest to learn and easiest to tell your future employers that yes, I do know a single little thing about source control. Yes, sir.
All right. Yes. All right. Thank you for sharing your working experience. So, audience, what can be concluded from what he said is that potential employers aren't looking for someone who knows how to use GitHub. They are looking for someone who understands how to use source control. Because if you were to understand source control, then chances are you are flexible with not just using GitHub, but also other software such as GitLab and so on. Did I get that correct, Jonathan?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a better way to phrase it is that you must know the concept and reason why there's source control and people use it, because if you don't, and even worse, you don't care, you could just very easily ruin the product that that company is building, and that can cost a lot of money and a lot of time. So I guess it's a thing that when you want to join like into that team to work on that, you should know the importance and what are you working on first before they should allow you free access to their product, the development backend. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So on to the next question. Do you think it's a good idea to perhaps say you're in a situation where you are working with your team member, and before you ask them to pull your changes that you have committed, it's not exactly rare to see students ask each other to create their own copy of their own files because as I've said before, there are anxieties that come with pulling changes because, as you may know, I'm also a programming student as well, and we have faced this kind of issue before. So I would ask my team member to create a copy of his own project file, and then pull the changes. If there's anything lost, just put your copy of the file back into the repository. I mean, is that exactly a good practice, or should we be discouraged from doing it?
What I would like to add about it is that your concerns is exactly what GitHub is made for. Now, I didn't brush about it right now. It's that one key element I said is everything is documented and every change is documented, and henceforth every change is both reversible but also repeatable. So there is the function, a command called cherry pick that is much more advanced, that it is in learn Git branching as well, and it is a much more advanced concept. It's basically when you basically pick the changes in a commit and you relocate them somewhere else. So let's say I'm going to use the step thing again just in case people can get confused. On step 1, you paint the floors red. And step 2, your friend comes in and paints the wall yellow, but also paints the floor yellow. You can cherry pick your step 1 to move it after your friend's step, so that technically his change came first. Henceforth, he painted the wall yellow, floor yellow, and then in their timeline, you came in and painted the floor red.
I see.
That can be something you want to look about, but it's advanced for the reason why, because you are moving timelines. So like in Marvel shows, in DC shows, in every goddamn show, messing with time, not so good. Don't do that unless absolutely necessary. So you're going to make changes that could potentially break stuff. So it's like the grandfather paradox again, is that if you move a dependency that came before and you moved it in the future, how did the code exist on that dependency if it came from the future? Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how that can like bring up issues as well.
So not regardless, if you are worried about it, there's of course be absolutely communicative with your team, your friend, your team member. Tell them that you're touching this. Please do not touch this, because if you do, it's your fault. You're gonna get your work wasted because I'm in the right. So revert your changes. Your change, go. You rework because I'm in the right. I think that's how we coped. A bit toxic, but it makes people be extra careful.
Yes, there is definitely a certain amount of discipline that's required when you're using GitHub. You need to like be communicative, right?
Yeah,
be
definitely.
present, basically.
But I would say working on any project require you to be disciplined anyhow. This makes it easier because this like documents your stuff. Imagine if it's like a project with like 1,000 folders and you have to replace files one by one. So like if someone make a change, why does this thing break? I don't know. So yeah, discipline I personally think is very important everywhere. GitHub here is
Jonathan, I think you're cutting
okay.
off. You're cutting off. All right.
Oh no, sorry. So
It's
discipline is
alright.
important in almost every project, right? I'm sure you agree to that. And
Yep.
GitHub here makes it much easier, but it does not entail for excuses for us to be lazy as well. Yes, that's all I'll add to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I think that is all for the questions actually. So Nia, do you have any more questions?
Nope,
All
I'm
right.
good.
All right. Okay. So yeah. So that settles the podcast for tonight. As you can see, GitHub's application extends further from game development, and it can prove useful to all programmers if used correctly. Thank you for joining us on tonight's podcast, Jonathan. You have been an inspiration to us.
Inspiration, that's some very high praise. It's just like you're welcome. It's just that I'm a senior that has ran through walls, ran into walls, broken through walls, and learned from picking myself up. So I no doubt that you would, and everyone else who will be involved, like doing GitHub, doing all this kind of stuff, you will definitely face issues. But take those issues as lessons, because without these lessons, you will not be able to grow. Unless you're a god in everything, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, audience, that is basically the hustle in this industry. So that concludes the talk. Now, if you are interested in joining UOW MKDU game development or computing programs, do take a look at our UOW Malaysia KDU website or scan the QR code on the screen. We have courses that can help you get started in learning the basics and kickstart your career as a full-time game developer or as a computer engineer. These are also the Facebook page and the Instagram page where you can learn more about where you can learn more about our game and computing programs. Finally, down below is the GameDevItch.io game page where you can view and try out our past and current games made by the students of UOW MKDU. So if you enjoyed our talk for tonight, do follow us on Instagram, that is UOWMKDU_dice. And join our Discord channel by scanning the QR code on the screen. We will have more events planned out towards the year, and you can also suggest ideas in our Discord server on what you would like to see for our next event. Also, the Discord server is a place where you can make new friends from different courses in the school. So if you have any questions or inquiries about DICE, do email us at dice@kdu-online.com. This event was brought to you by DICE Collective, that stands for Design, Innovation, Computing, and Entertainment. We are a school club that is part of SCCM, which is short for School of Computing Creative Media. All right. Everyone, we have an announcement to make. Now, we want you to join the DICE committee. We are looking for more members to help out with future events. You will gain the experience in teamwork that will prove to be useful in your future career. Furthermore, you will expand your network of friends and create wonderful memories in your college life. You can join us here by scanning the QR code or by searching us using the link below it. This link will be offline tomorrow afternoon, so what are you waiting for? Join now! Alright, so finally we would like to thank Jonathan Tang again for sharing his experience with GitHub, as well as explaining how using it will improve the workflow of our projects. We would also like to thank UOW Malaysia KDU, DICE, SCCM, and ACC who have helped out with the making of this event. After this, we will have a 15-minute Q&A session, and if you have any questions that you would like to be answered, please feel free to ask in the YouTube live chat. We would love to hear from you and answer your questions. We will be taking your questions in the next 5 minutes. Afterwards, we will be giving out the TAC point form to the students who will be needing it.
Hey guys, are we up?
Yes. So, Nia, do you have any questions by students who are wanting to ask questions to from who wants questions to ask to Jonathan?
Hmm. We managed to gather a few of them. Wait, just running them through real quick. So, yeah, one of them is asking, or should I say, one of them wants to know more about CI/CD pipeline in GitHub. Jonathan, can you give any explanation of this? Even I'm quite curious.
Okay,
Yes,
so
I'm not
CI,
familiar with that either.
yeah, CI/CD is a very, I won't say too very, but it's much a little bit more advanced method on how GitHub can make things more automated. So CI/CD would mean continuous integration and continuous deployment or delivery, and it depends on what you need. So deployment would basically deployment would deploy code changes to your customers, while delivery would bring the code to like production ready environments. So they're almost technically the same thing, but if you like to be technical, it's kind of different. So what is the CI part? So basically CI/CD is broken about to two parts: the CI part, the integration part, and the delivery/deployment part. So integration is where usually what people talk about is all the automation of the building, the test, and the integration of code within a shared repository. So uh, how would I describe this? So let's say I'm sorry, I'm a game developer, so I'll give it in a more game perspective. Where if you build a game, when you make a game, you develop a game, you do it inside an editor, right? So when you ship it out, it's not going to be the whole editor. It's going to be like a packaged bundle of codes and resources you need to make the game work. So to keep testing code or test the end product, it's going to be such a hassle because you gotta wait a long time to build it. So in smaller games, it can be pretty short amount of time to build it. But when you're building like AAA games, of course, it's gonna take hours. As even with a beefy computer, like I would say a AAA game would be like at least half an hour to build up the whole package. And it's really huge. So imagine like this is a compressed version of the game itself, the product itself. Imagine how big it is in the editor, how much things you have to crunch, and how much time you need to waste just to wait on it to be completed. So usually with if you're implementing CI, they usually have QA for that to handle it already. But what CI does in that part of the pipeline, it basically means that you automate the build and potentially your tests and your integration on how you will want your product to be. So from what I've tried, I would first admit I am not a professional at this. I don't use it professionally. I've tried a little bit on it, but it basically builds a product. I used it as a method to build my end product before I have to build it myself, which just makes my entire I need to wait my entire PC for it. So that all being said, I can keep building up versions while I make changes to it. So I can just directly swap over to go try the version out. So I don't have to keep waiting and waiting on. So I'm not quite sure how to simplify it at the moment. It's just setting up on how you will want your product to be tested. Because in the end, working on editor is one thing, working on an end product is another thing. So I think how people do it, I think I did it wrongly personally. I did the build on my own computer, so it's basically just I made a change and it just started building. I'm just okay. It's not helpful for me. But I think how professional companies they do it, they send it off to another computer will build the stuff there, deploy it to QA will do all the testing they want. We don't have to wait for that. We don't have to dedicate someone to wait for that thing to build.
Mhm.
We just do our stuff. Everyone done, commit it up, done, and then send the QA for testing. So
Mhm.
delivery, very simple. It's just if you play Steam games, you have a Steam, they see the changes there. I think if I'm not wrong, Steam has their own integration for delivery system where basically you build, you send the package over, Steam will just take it, boom, it's out, update for everyone. I think that's the easiest way I can plan it for you.
Hmm.
For you
So,
guys.
from what you're saying, it's like an alternative to creating a build for a game. Is it?
Not really an alternative. It's a pipeline. It's not only for games, right?
Hmm.
So when you make a
Okay.
product in a digital software, it's usually called a build. So the CI, what it does is basically it helps you facilitate and smoothen things out, because a very big chore on testing the end product is to make the build and test the build. And this can be automated because it's just a chore. It's just a very tedious chore that you need to keep on doing. So to eliminate this and smoothen the pipeline, this is where CI/CD comes to play, where you just make it smoother so that things can be automated without a need of a developer spending time, especially like those developers. You need to assign someone, you're paying like what, someone 4K 5K a month just to do this. It's gonna be a waste of resources. So automating the code, less hassle, maybe less complexity. I won't say that. It might be a little bit more complicated. Again, I don't have much experience to talk about this and give enough justice to this topic, but I think I can boil it down to this. Yeah.
Yes. Well, nonetheless, I think this is something that will prove useful, and it's something that we need to keep at the back of our head, keep at the back of our minds, and perhaps research once we point in time and that level. So, do we have any more questions, Nia?
Like, hold on,
All right, hang
I got
on.
some links to
Oh
send
yeah,
over.
someone also asked, is it a good practice to use branches as a backup keeper?
Okay. I can relate to this because I used to do this. The big branches. This is okay. I'll put it like a train, right? I just make a copy of this train and I'll dock it there, save it here. It will be safe here forever. You can, if you want, you can make unlimited branches, but your branch list will become very huge. If you're okay with that, then who's to tell me that it's wrong, right? So personally, if you want to roll back, you could already, but you need to like look through your commits. So if you're really lazy to roll back all the commits, you can just honestly swap that over. But usually when people talk about rollback, uh, when they talk about rollback, they basically mean that some features need to be removed from the program itself. So you don't want to remove the newer ones that you want in. So if you're gonna make a branch to backup, it's basically literally when you switch branch, basically your changes are only up to that branch and got stagnant. So you just keep keeping a version of the file. If you're keeping on a version of the file, then you're not essentially using what source control is all about, which is to log your changes. So if you're keeping that version anyway, why not just like copy it and upload it to a cloud drive, which works the same way. You don't need a branch for it anymore because it just goes stagnant there. Now, what people
Mhm.
usually do for rollbacks, it's because they want to remove certain features, but along the way they added some features they will want to keep there. Yeah, you can do the branch thing. It's not entirely wrong. You can do it for convenience sake as well if you want to just revert back to a version without all those changes. Actually, to buy back some of my words, that's exactly what main branch does. That's exactly what main branch does, because main branch is the public one. It's the stable version of the build. You build on the development. If things go wrong, main branch is unaffected. So that's technically main branch. So you can think of how you want to work with it, but essentially main branch is your forever backup branch. It's your save file, your location. So make sure when you push into main, it is stable, safe, and nothing will blow up. Yep.
All right. Thank you.
All right, duly noted. And I believe we have time for one more question, if that's all right with you, Jonathan.
Yeah, go hit me right away.
All right, so if you have any final advices to our fellow students, what will you tell them?
just specifically on GitHub or
Well, it can be
anything?
about GitHub, it can be about life. I mean, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Hmm. I would say when all done and said, when you disregard every international standards, conventional commits, Angular commits, or whatever it is, it all boils down to a sense of higher self when you work in a team. So even if you don't use GitHub, even if you just use Google Drive as your backup, if your team thinks Google Drive is much easier and it facilitates it much better, then go ahead and try that, because although GitHub might be the go-to way, does not mean it might be a way. I think I repeated this quite a lot of times. I cannot stress it enough because I see a lot of juniors of myself, they just stress themselves going through doing GitHubbing and just doing source control, whereas there's no point to, even though they're just working on a file, working on a very small project. If you want to learn, sure, by all way, okay, go do what is best for your team. So do what's best for your team again, and communication and discipline should come first before anything else. So with the right communication, right discipline, any pipeline technically works. I guess that's why source control is actually just a solution to certain problematic people intention. Oh no, let me rephrase that. Not problematic people. Certain problems that may arise in a collaborative environment. If you're ready to tackle that without using any other tools, by all means, So yes, trust yourself, be less anxious. GitHub saves everything, so just make sure if you know what you're doing already, it actually can get back everything you have because it's forever loaded in history. It cannot be deleted until an admin forces it to. That's my advice.
All right. All right. So I think that is all for tonight. Thank you everyone for joining today's event. And now to the UOW MKDU students who need the TAC points, you have to take 2 screenshots of this event and write a report on the event to SAC. Then fill in the TAC point form by going into the link on the screen or by scanning the QR code. This link will be offline tomorrow, offline tomorrow afternoon, so do fill it right now. Again, thank you for joining us, Jonathan and everyone. We hope that tonight what you have learned will help you in your future endeavors, and we will be looking forward to you joining us again in the future. So this is Arif Imran signing out.
And this is Nia also signing out. Have a good night, everyone, and yeah, have a good weekend.